Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. You can follow us on Twitter, I am not saying X, for live stream reminders, highlighted clips, memes, and more. You can find us at @SecWeekly, SEC Weekly. I'm sorry, it doesn't work. I'm calling it Twitter.
I'm not calling it Twitter either.
Nope. You're not calling it Twitter?
I'm not calling it Twitter. I'm going to call it whatever I want. Just, X doesn't work for me. So it's the bird service,
Let's just not call it anything and nobody use it.
Yes. I'm all for that.
I used to use a parental control device called Circle. And it was impossible to recommend to anybody because, like, if try and Google Circle, like, you could never find the damn thing. It's just brands are important.
That they are.
And yeah, I mean, to throw away something with that much brand, what is it? Brand equity? Is that what you would call it, Tyler?
That's exactly what you call it. And Elon destroyed a lot of brand equity.
Throw away the bird, throw away the name, like. Yeah,
I've said this before, and I know we're going down a rat hole to open the show today, or open the segment today. But I've said this before. Yeah, let's rat hole. That brand equity burn, like the penultimate, the best brand equity you can have is when people use your brand as a verb.
As a verb,
like Kleenex. Yeah. I need a Kleenex. That's actually a brand. It's not tissue, but everybody calls it Kleenex. When you say tweet it and it became a verb, you should never, under any circumstances, leave that brand equity.
Yeah. Insane. And if you haven't noticed, we have Mr. Tyler Shields with us now. Welcome,
the brand
Tyler.
Equity King, the brand equity advisor.
Our brand equity expert. Sorry, you were about to say something, Katie.
I was.
It looked like you were about to say something.
No, I was. I'm just trying to go back, 30 seconds. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Also, with the changing of the name and changing of the brand and all that goodness, you have to think about your customer, your consumer first. In this case, that had nothing to do with any of these decisions. And so if you want to ruin your company, think about yourself first. If you want to actually have a successful company, perhaps you want to think about your customers first.
Maybe. Yeah. Good tip.
Well, and with Twitter,
hot tip, actually think about your customers.
And with Twitter,
yeah, that's my really sophisticated advice for today.
Right. With Twitter, who's the customer? So
it's changed quite a bit, I think, Sean.
Is it the user? Is it the advertiser? Or is it Elon? And I think that's part of the challenge, right? Who is the person or the group that it exists for? And that's interesting because I thought it was the advertiser, like every other social media, but maybe not. I don't know.
Well, and that became very confusing because if you looked at the average Twitter user, before and after Elon took over, it changed quite a bit. And I don't think Twitter lost its users to any other one platform. Like some of them went to Mastodon, some of them are on Threads. A lot of them are just gone. Like they're not using anything in place of Twitter anymore. They just have extra time.
Well, I've seen some statistics on LinkedIn and how LinkedIn is it's not set up for it. It's not set up for it in the same way, but a lot of people are trying to use it in that way. And yeah, people are just saying, yeah, whatever. We don't have a replacement for it. I'm certainly not using X, but
yeah. All right, let's get going here. So one of the things I said in the intro, which Tyler, you weren't here for, is that we're still seeing funding, but I can't remember the last time I saw C, D, E. It's all A and B.
C, D, E is, later stage is more difficult, right? Later stage, You require actual metrics of success. The further along the pipeline you go, the more metrics of success, the closer to profitability you have to be. And it used to be okay to be stage G, H, I, or whatever letters you want to put in there and not be profitable. Well, guess what? That's moved way earlier. You got to be much closer to profitable and healthy way earlier in that life cycle now. And companies just aren't there. And so, well, not only that, plus add to that the fact that many companies 50, 75, 100 million in the bank, which gives them a lot of runway to get profitable and to grow a significant amount of time. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing that late stage crush. We're also seeing a bit of an early stage crush, but you're right, way less of an issue than late stage.
So it's interesting because we're hearing two things. We're hearing, the market is back, kind of, mostly. But at the same time, we had that article that Doug added last week, from unicorns to zombies, tech startups run out of time and money. So the way I'm kind of seeing that is some of these companies that raised big rounds that were in these later stages, in that boom time, before everything just stopped and the bottom dropped out. It sounds like a lot of those are just going to be allowed to die, if they can't survive off of whatever they've got left. And it seems like a lot of investors are, just redoing their investment theses and starting over from scratch. At least, is there any truth to that, or is that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Adrian, because put yourself in the shoes of a late stage pre-IPO company. They've got revenue. Okay, they've got 100 million or more of revenue. Those companies aren't going to die. Right. Very few of those will die. They've got 100 million in revenue. They'll slash. They'll find ways to cut to the bare bones. They'll get themselves into a spot where they can get healthy. I remember once a long time ago, I may have told this story on here before. If so, I apologize for being repetitive. But I was at a analyst event for, I want to say it was Box. It was either Box or Dropbox. I think it was Box because they were publicly traded at the time. And they were publicly traded, and the metrics were very much as if they were a pre-unicorn kind, or a pre-public unicorn, that stage we're talking about. And they were talking about their metrics and how much they were burning and losing money. And this is a publicly traded company. And I asked the CFO privately afterward, I said, when are you going to get to profitable? You're a publicly traded company. When are you going to do that? He said, Tyler, I can be profitable tomorrow. All I have to do is just restructure the company, kill off a bunch of headcount, take the company down to a manageable level, and we'll be profitable. So your super late stage companies that are just before IPO can do that, right? So I don't see those going out of business. The ones that'll go out of business are in the 30, 40, 50 million range and have no true path to getting to IPO, can't get profitable, may take way longer than their ability to raise capital to get to IPO or profitability. That's your zombie corn. That's your one that's just kind of plodding along and can't figure out how to get out of this death spiral. And so I think you're going to see that in the C to G range.
And I love that you used Box as an example, because I recall them being really bold back in the day, back when all the EPSS, is that what we call it? Enterprise Sync and Share?
Yeah, yep.
Enterprise Storage Sync and Share companies, where they were all consumer plus business, right? And they were all freemium, so Dropbox had this crazy, however many millions of users, but something around 1%, between 1% and 2% were paying customers. Whereas Box said, nope, we're going to go a different route. We're going to go just business. And they took the just business route, and it seems like that was the way to go back then.
Yeah, but I think what they did, and that a lot of people were questioning at the time because it was pre a lot of companies doing it, was saying, I don't care, we're going to grow at all costs. We're going to take the mega risk that we can achieve multi-billion dollars of valuation and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, and we're going to just go absolutely enormous. And they did. And really, what I learned by that discussion with the CFO was there's very little, once you're at that stage, once you have that level of revenue, there's very little that can kill you. There's a lot that can make your life tough, but there's very little that can kill you, because you just, as cold, as crass as this sounds, you just kill off resources and you kill off spend, and you get the company to a point where it's healthy against its growth rate.
Right. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, to be honest, I haven't had. Just got back from Italy. uh, I'm just over 24 hours back. So throwing together the show and the
So your
stories
brain's
here.
firing on all cylinders, right, Adrian?
Oh, my brain's fine. I just haven't had the usual amount of time to prep for this episode. So I've not looked into any of the companies that raised funding here. We've got a 40 million for Armor Code here, 30 million for Mine, MINE.
Yeah, 22 for Opal Security.
Yep, yep, and so some good sized Series A's and Series B's. Here we've got a few new companies. Zool, yeah, I think is number 5. How you would pronounce that? Secure from code to deploy.
Zool.
It's interesting. There have been a few cryptography companies popping up. The other new company is Envido. Both of those have raised some seed. And I just watched Ghostbusters on the flight back from Italy. So
it's funny you say that. I was trying to come up with the quote. There is no whatever her name is. There is only Zool. That's what I was trying to come up with in my head.
I forget the character's name. Yeah, there is no whatever the character's name was. There is only Zool. I just watched that 2 days ago on a plane.
There you go.
So that's why I'm pronouncing.
So it's interesting,
as Zool.
So it's interesting, 15, 22, 30, 40 million. These are some Series A, Series Bs. Series Bs dropping down to the 22 to 40 range. Hey, that's a little bit interesting. Bs were bigger than that for quite some time. 15A is a little on the large side for prove and run. IoT, we're seeing a lot of markets kind of firing again. Are they markets that are going to return? I don't know. These are areas that you and I, Adrian, we continually debate every time we get together and have cocktails or have coffee. And we talk about these markets that never materialize, that can never seem to get to success. IoT Sec's one of them. There's been a few players that have done well. Clarity and others have gotten there in some ways. But yeah, interesting to see some of these markets. And crypto is one of those markets where it's like, to what end? Crypto to me is, okay, what are you doing with the crypto? How are you providing value? Crypto is not a product. It's a means to some other product.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the post quantum stuff, as I think it was last year, it's been over a year since we did our quantum security special, quantum computing special. And we know that the algorithms are out there. Your browser's using them. AWS has them. So post-quantum encryption algorithms are out there. They've been selected by NIST. They've been beat up, and some of them didn't make the cut. So we're truly in that kind of post-quantum state. So I'm not sure how much, and most of that's open source. So I'm not sure how much room there is in the market for selling that as a product.
Yeah.
Certainly there was before NIST had selected those. You could be early to market and say, hey, we're one of the only companies out here who can make sure your data is protected. And it was actually mentioned earlier, talking about data that has been encrypted data that has been saved by like nation states and stuff like that. And eventually when quantum can theoretically crack some of that stuff, all of a sudden you have the biggest data breach ever, right?
So I have to admit, Adrian, I did not have post-quantum state on my buzzword bingo card today. So I'm going to have to write that down. But that is the buzzword quote of the day. We are in a post-quantum state.
Yeah, we are. It's for folks who haven't been watching it. It's out there. It's in the most boring of places. It's web browsers and web servers can talk some of these new algorithms. You can use them in AWS. So we're pretty late stage in terms of getting crypto up to speed and ready for crazy quantum computers that can break the internet and all that. So there still is that question of all that data that's been saved. Can it be cracked later? We'll see. But yeah, at this point, I think data from this point on is going to be harder and harder to crack as we get moved over to these new algorithms. And I don't know how you sell it as a product, because it's just going to be baked into so many of the cornerstones of the internet.
So did you get a chance, Adrian, to take a look at the Ghostbusters website here, Zool, XEOL? Did you get a chance to look at that in any length?
No, just a homepage where they have the diagram there. Yeah, it's some kind of like software supply chain security company.
Yeah, so this is one area I've been trying to learn about, and I don't know if Sean or Katie have commentary here either, but I've been trying to learn a little bit about the next phase of AppSec and really what it should and could look like. And I feel like there's the ASPM stuff, right? Which is
which Armor Code is the number one.
Which Armor Code is, right? That's a market I think that's gonna be a grow quick, burn hard, and get acquired market. Because
already
it's not
happening,
enough.
Right?
Yeah, it's not enough to stand alone longer term. But what I often wonder is this whole supply chain security, ingest your supply chain, ingest your SBOMs. Are SBOMs, and do you think, and this is for anyone on the feed here, do we think that SBOMs are a feature or are they a market? Is SBOM security big enough, be it SBOM plus VEX or SBOM plus all the other bombs I've heard of companies talking about, like 2 or 3 different versions of BOM this and BOM that.
Yeah.
Is that a market or is that a piece of something else?
That's just a feature that needs to be baked into GitHub, right? Or GitLab or Bitbucket, so, whatever or Exonius or Jupyter One. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like zero trust, right? Like it's a concept. You have all your components listed out. You have a list of your components. And then using that, you can get version numbers. Is that version number current? Does it have a 0-day in it? Does it have some kind of vulnerability in it? It's a concept of knowing what's baked into your stuff, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't know, whatever it was, 3-4 years ago, there was all this debate about SBOMs and the importance of it. And it felt like there were a number of people screaming from the treetops trying to make this a market. But it's a feature. I think where it differentiates from something like zero trust.
Most of security are features. Most of
that's true. Yeah. But I think where it differentiates from something like zero trust, zero trust is a concept, framework, principle, approach, whatever you have it. The whole goal of it is to look at security holistically. SBOMs are an input to vulnerability management, to risk management, to supply chain security, to all of these things. So SBOM security, or whatever people were trying to make it back in 2019, 2020, 21, it's at least in my opinion, one of these things that just needs to be rolled up. And it feels to me like maybe this company started in that stage. They just landed a seed round. It's 3.2 million. So it's pretty modest, but maybe this is the company that's been trying to see the light of day for a couple of years. And it needs to evolve to be part of that longer, like you said, the application space, or even just rolled up into, greater software security.
What this company has to convince me is why, if I'm standardized on GitHub, if we use GitHub for everything, GitHub has Dependabot, which is SBOM for GitHub. It's the supply chain security feature of GitHub. Why would I not use Dependabot? Why would I use? And again, it's got to be one of those things of, if Dependabot's good enough, you're not going to cut it. Like you have to pitch that as Dependabot's missing these key things that GitHub is never going to add, because otherwise GitHub could just add those features.
So here's what I like about Zool. Besides being a monster that lives in my chair and pulls me down into the closet, what I do like about Zool, and I don't know if this is enough to win, but what I like about them is they ingest SBOMs. Okay, that's a feature. They visualize supply chain. Okay, that's interesting. They can hook up likely via integrations to the rest of your application architecture and visualize what your supply chain looks like, both from a software perspective and likely from a build perspective. And that's where that fancy graph on their website comes from. They understand vulnerabilities, licensing, data sourcing, maintainability, searchability. Okay, still not super, super interesting. But they've also added signature verification and build verification. So they're actually signing code too. So they're rolling up really what might be 3 or 4 micro markets that prior to today's investment model, in previous investment models, every single one of these would have been a standalone AppSec company that all had 20 million in funding and got to Series B, right? And now what they're doing is they're rolling together 3, 4, 5 of these different micro feature value props in the AppSec space to hopefully create an ASPM verification of build plus SCA plus bomb management type solution, which could be interesting. I think there's an idea there. Whether it's enough to have legs is still TBD. They got to get the product market fit, but it's one I'll watch, other than the weird name about Monsters on Ghostbusters.
I think as a customer, if you're in a market that's has a lot of pressure to use SBOMs and to to be able to show like a dashboard, like here's our proof that our components within our product are secure. I think this fills that niche. Otherwise, I think people pass on it unless they're being forced to do it.
Deep dive on Zool.
All right. Yeah. So, Sean, I promised you Active Directory, and we're going to talk about Active Directory. So, Thinkst has a beta canary token for Active Directory credentials. You mentioned you have a new tool there. I don't know what it does yet, but yeah. So I was a little disappointed here that this doesn't shove the credentials into memory. I think you leave them in files. I mean, not like attackers care, whether it's in a spreadsheet or in a text file, like they don't give a shit. They're going to use them if they find them, right? But I've seen other deception products that actually inject them into memory as well, so that when somebody runs Mimikatz, there will be fake credentials in there that trigger once they're used. But what do you think of this? And I'd love to hear more about what you were talking about earlier, what your company created. You're on mute.
I'm always happy to see things that are not so much deception technology, but are things that can provide an actual alert when someone is doing something they shouldn't. So basically, what Thinkst has put together is a credential that can be dropped in a file somewhere. They have a few different ways to generate, like an unattended XML file, and you can place that on a share or somewhere else. Attackers, pen testers, red teamers are always looking for credentials on shares in users' home directories and other places. When they find them, often an Excel file, they're going to attempt to use those credentials because most of the time they're usable, they work just fine. What they're doing here is automating or making it easier to create this credential store, like an unattend.xml file that you put on a share. And then the attacker comes across it and then attempts to authenticate with that username and password. And what's interesting about this approach that Thinkst has is you run a script through a scheduled task on your domain controllers that checks the event log to see if anyone attempts to log on with this account. So it's not even a situation where you create that account in Active Directory. You don't have to, although I would. But right. The thing is that you can have it as an account that doesn't even exist. And when just by the sheer fact of the attacker attempting to authenticate with that account, it's enough to trigger this canary. And of course, Canary has a lot of different approaches. They look at a lot of different systems. I love Canary. I think they're a great company. They have a great product that enables their core is the Canary itself, which is a device or a virtual machine that it can simulate just about any kind of device on the network, including now domain controller, which is really cool. But the Canary tokens has been an extension of that's free, that enables anyone to do this. In fact, you can put Canary tokens into Word documents and other type of documents. So when someone opens it, they get that information back. So I would like this approach where you get a high fidelity alert or action that happens from something that only an attacker would try to do. I put together a detection for an attack method called Kerberoasting that had 100% detection rate, that was 100% true positive, not false positive. What we've been working on since you asked at Trimark for the past couple of years is building a tool around Active Directory in order to help provide better understanding of the security posture of every Active Directory force in the environment So there's a lot of companies out there that have a lot of Active Directory forests, and you could go ahead and maybe have an assessment of one or two of those every other year or every couple of years. And with the products on the market today, there's not a good understanding of where the security posture is of all of them. Maybe again with that focus of one forest, one console, one forest. What we're doing with Trimark Vision is basically identifying all of the most important security issues across every Active Directory forest and being able to segment them out so that the folks that actually manage, say, these 3 to 5 or 4 Active Directory forests over here, they can log into Vision and see the things that are issues with their forest that they manage, as well as the real world based security score of those. But then the global security operations center and the security folks can actually see and compare the risk score, the Trimark risk score across all the 80 forests and figure out, which are the ones that need more attention and which ones don't. Certainly what Thinx is doing is identifying, okay, this attacker is attempting to, is on the network somewhere, because you can check by the event log and see where they're coming from and what they're communicating with. What we're doing with Vision is proactive, where you can help close these holes, these misconfigurations that attackers leverage to then do the next step with it.
It's more like a vulnerability scanner for Active Directory problems.
I mean, it's kind of like that. It's identifying those misconfigurations, those things that attackers absolutely will use in order to compromise the environment, and then basically say, all right, across every forest, here's the objective scale of which one's better or worse. And what's really cool is we built in a mergers and acquisitions scenario in Vision, where you can compare a forest that you don't own yet. Just by running a tool in that.
I like that.
And then capture that data and upload that into the Vision portal. And it'll do a comparison. It'll show you what the risk score is between them. It'll auto-generate some text saying, here's the risk if you connect them through a trust, as well as by category showing you what the issues are, as well as the key scoping. Like this, the one that's being acquired is single domain forest. The one that we have in production is 2 or 3. So that way you can kind of judge what the size is, but also the objective risk score will show you that, all right, if this company you're acquiring has a Trimark risk score of 2,000 and your internal production forest is 700, well, connecting that via trust is a very high level of risk. And the cool thing about this is continuous monitoring over time. So as things get fixed, that risk score goes down. So you could actually set a threshold of 800 or 700. Like the Trimark risk score has to be 700, 800 in order for any forest to be connected to any other via a trust, and then monitor that. And then when it falls out of compliance, you could actually break the trust temporarily or say, okay, you have this amount of time to resolve this critical that just came in through Vision. But it enables you to really understand the true security issues within the environment, because we understand the operations side as well as the security side, plus with the context of what attackers are really doing in the real world.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think I think I'm going to sell my stock in biotechwidgets.com. They're not looking too hot.
This is not investment advice. Just saying.
It's not a real company, so it's fine.
I know, but it's still not investment advice. So don't go Google it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that, Sean. Yeah. So a few things in here I brought over from the previous week. We're still seeing this trend of attackers going after a certain technique. So Citrix bleed, log4shell. There's still people out there who haven't fixed these vulnerabilities. So they're just all going to get scooped up by these attackers. And they're going to be, maybe they get to you, maybe they don't. If they scoop up 1,000 companies, they're going to plug that in somewhere and, organize it by revenue and attack in that order. And maybe your revenue is low enough that you don't get hit, but you're definitely, they've got access from some of these attempts. So this is story number 11, story number 12, story number 10. Story number 10 mentioned XP command shell, and I nearly had an aneurysm because I can't believe XP command shell still exists in Microsoft
the gift
SQL.
that keeps on giving, Adrian.
Oh my God.
Hey, there was another struts vulnerability.
I saw that too this week.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Again,
we're going to
the gift
continue.
that keeps on giving.
Right. We're going to continue to see this, Adrian, especially around like Citrix Bleed, where they're effectively targeting the managed service provider because so many companies in an effort to cut costs are outsourcing the management of their system, be it Active Directory or what else there is, or, everything else, where they have full admin rights to all these different organizations. And in the situation with Citrix Bleed is 60 credit unions and hospitals and other organizations were managed by this central MSP of sorts, and they have the access. So attackers are not dumb. They're going to go after the system or the group that actually has access to all those other things. And then it's targets of opportunity, but that's kind of ransomware.
And this MSP didn't patch their Citrix stuff.
Yes. So that is the issue. And the attackers are going to continue to just troll around and see what they can find. It's an easy enough thing to find.
It's situations like this that make me just wish I was in a different industry. Yeah. And I don't mean that in a, the same old vulns keep popping up, therefore the world's going to end. I just wonder, like in the last couple of weeks too, I've been hearing quite a bit of grumblings that, taking out my crystal ball, my predictive crystal ball that I'm now, for those of you that aren't watching the video, I'm rubbing the crystal ball to get my futures here. It feels like we're going to have, and we're going to get in 2024, government regulation to start requiring stuff to actually be secured. God forbid we do our job as cybersecurity people. But I am hearing a lot of grumblings that regulation, that government involvement is coming down the pipe in the next 24 months, 12 to 24 months. And is it because we're seeing a massive upswing in ransomware? We're seeing a massive upswing in things exactly like you're describing, the gifts that keep on giving, the viruses that we can't get rid of, the not really the viruses we can't get rid of, but the attacks that just we can't squish that keep coming back. And finally, God forbid, we make people liable. We make companies and software creators liable for these problems. I'm really thinking we might see 2024 start to get regulations actually in place that push this stuff forward.
Stop stepping on my newsletter for 2 weeks from now.
Was that your newsletter for 2 weeks from now?
For anybody listening, I'm giving Tyler the evil eye.
Yeah.
It's only part of it. It's okay. Read the rest. But yes, it is. I agree with you. I think we are going to see such a commingling of insurance and regulation that companies are going to be like, what the hell just happened? But it's been coming for a long time. And it sort of ties into number 13 here, which is like, you're not special. If you're not doing your job, regulations, insurance, all this whole thing is going to make you. Somebody's going to step in if you're really causing any kind of damage.
I think we're eventually going to see this with cars too. Like it seems inevitable. Like once the self-driving thing is figured out, insurance will make it impossible for you to drive your own car because it'll just be too big of a risk. And we're starting.
Adrian, did you see the news today? Did you see the news today that Tesla recalled
every single one
vehicles for the fact that they've killed some people or something with the autopilot, and they're going to do a software upgrade for literally every vehicle.
Self-driving anyway, right? Like they called it self-driving, but it never was.
Yeah.
But yeah, still, with SaaS, only one company has to fix the vulnerability, right? But if you're running your own Citrix stuff, every company out there has to be on top of it, has to update that software. And when it's an MSP, a managed service provider with access to a bunch of credit unions, that hurts, and they don't update, like with Rackspace. They had a month, they didn't install that Exchange patch, and their entire Exchange hosting business got killed because of that. And it took them the better part of a month to restore data for over 10,000 companies' email.
The better part of a month, which had how much impact on their business?
Well, yeah. I mean,
negligible.
Yeah.
Oh, the tens of thousands of people depending on them for email, there's probably a much bigger impact
them as a
on their
business. The people that depend on them, absolutely, they were.
But
PO'd.
yeah, it was 1%. It was 1% of Rackspace's business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they just pushed them all over to Microsoft 365, which Microsoft never has security issues.
So for whatever,
they're doing fine.
So I just think that 2024, we have to start to see something that starts to clean this up, right? And I think nobody will do it out of their own accord. There's no business that will do this because they want to. It has to be regulated. And this is coming from a guy who for the last 25 years in this industry has always said, screw regulation. They can't get it right. They never push it fast enough. They never push it hard enough. They never push enough teeth behind it. Here, I'm flipping. I'm officially flip-flopping and saying the only way to get it done is
they
regulation.
Didn't give us a chance, right? We had a chance.
We had 20 plus years of chances.
But like I've written, in utopia, everybody does the right thing. We just don't live there.
Yeah.
So real quickly, before we get off this topic, I'd like to put an official plug for the Reformed Analyst on Substack. Please go subscribe, pledge your payments, pay her as much as you can, because Miss Katie is one hell of an author, and I love everything she writes. So go sign up.
Even though you already know the topic she's going to write about in 2 weeks, we don't know exactly what she's going to write.
I steal all her thunder, so please go pay her for the results.
This is a teaser. We know the topic, but we don't know the content. All right?
It's only part of the topic.
Check it out.
It's only a small part of the topic. I have some security friends also contributing their ideas and thoughts to this. So
just a teaser.
Right.
You didn't give it all away.
I love it.
Yeah, but you chose my part. You didn't choose anybody else's part, Tyler. So thanks.
I'm omniscient. I knew that was coming.
Yeah. So, as always, sometimes I feel like I have a hive mind with Kelly Shortridge, because sometimes I look at her blog posts and I'm like, that came right out of my brain. So this is one of those things. I often say cybersecurity isn't special. Many years ago, maybe back when I was still an analyst, I decided to start looking at other industries and how they handle failures, how they handle, some of the same issues that we handle. And that's the conclusion I came to: is we're not special. Look, other industries have dealt with a lot of the same issues, and we can learn a lot from them. But we act as if we're some kind of special snowflake, and we have to design all the solutions from the ground up, and it's just not the case. I mean, sure, there are some things that are unique to cybersecurity, but it's more some of the details, not the core of how you solve some of these problems. So this needed to be written, it needed to be said, and it's worth taking taking a look at. Reading this, it's not as long as some of Kelly's stuff. Sometimes Kelly's stuff requires some time to, you got to make a coffee, sit down and set aside some time. This is a shorter one, and she gets to the point really quickly. She's got 5 main points here.
Yeah, no, I gave this a skim. I think it's really cool. I definitely will. I'm going to highlight this in the Cyber Why on my Substack for sure. I think it's a really interesting read that I think people should, even if you don't agree with it, read it, digest it, consume it, and come up with your own version of the thoughts that she's putting down on paper, right? She's putting thought-provoking ideas down on paper, and it's things that, we should all be considering when we consider how we do our jobs as cybersecurity professionals. Plus, she uses the term "with all due respect," so you can't get mad at her. It's right there in the headline.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I really love the advise, don't dictate, as well as conduct user research. I think one of the biggest challenges I see with cybersecurity for years now is trying to change user behavior without understanding user behavior. Why do users click on links? Why do we download files that we get sent, or we were encouraged to download? Because that's our job. Like Katie said last week, that's what we do every day, day in and day out. We've trained people to click on links because we send email. We do these things. You need to fill this out. You need to fill that out. That's how it's been done for years. And the only reason attackers are doing this and using this method is because this is what we've been trained to do. This is what we've been doing. Do your research to figure out how do people actually do things, understand what their goals are, why they do the things they do, and then let's figure out how to make security part of that seamless process as best we can. Otherwise, we're just doing a disservice by saying, oh, you click this link in an email, now go through training or you're fired. It was the worst case.
Yeah, that's insane.
It is.
You guys had that conversation last week. I thought it was great. Yeah, it was a really good conversation. But yeah, it's you know, a lot of my side projects kind of revolve around this concept of, and the goal of it isn't to say that cybersecurity isn't important. Sure, it's important, but you know, trying to, you know, elevate the level of importance, you know, to the number one on a business's list of problems that they're worried about, it's not even close.
Never.
You know, if you're to make that list, the CEO doing something stupid, making a stupid strategic decision, like much higher than cybersecurity. Fraud, probably also much higher than cybersecurity. Like there are other things that are higher than us, and that's okay. That doesn't mean we're not important. That doesn't mean that the work we do isn't appreciated or important. So, you know, you got to be able to separate those things out.
Yeah, one of the best things cybersecurity can do is to be an enabler, not a blocker. And the organizations that I've seen that have their security really well set, like security assessments across systems, the ones that are the best at that do very, very well, are the ones where operations works hand in hand with security. Everyone understands what the security issues are. They work together to fix them. It's not operations versus security. There is no, situation where they're opposing forces, but they have to be working together. If you're not working together to improve the security, if it's not a situation where it's a collaborative partnership within the organization, they're never going to get there. They're never going to have a situation where security is set up and configured as a priority, as well as something that they're not going to be able to get to a good place and going to end up with ransomware and all these other issues that we're seeing out there. Go ahead, Katie.
And I think that's all very, very true. But I think the one thing that a lot of people are thinking, and a lot of people will bristle if they read this and go, what is she talking about? If you put it in a nicer way, which I'm usually not one to do, if you look at this as, hey, we don't need to be a special snowflake. If you're not spending, all of your time trying to talk about how important cybersecurity is and how we need a seat at the table and how we need to be mainstream, how everybody has to care, you've got a lot of time that you could be spending doing other things, i.e. your job. And we're already complaining about the so-called skills gap, talent shortage, all of these things, because as an industry, we're so enamored with our own problems versus just putting our heads down and fixing it. And if people aren't so focused on trying to get the attention, they might actually get more done. And that will be good for people in cyber, because then you get to have less pressure put on you. I mean, it's not that cybersecurity is not important, like Adrian said.
It hurts our credibility, though, to overplay our importance.
It hurts our credibility, and it takes time away from the things that need to be doing. Instead of fighting about, I'm the most important person in the world or in the room or whatever, focus on the job, and then you can take those good things. But I mean, even on my personal social media, I see so many people throughout the day. Like, I'll go on to social media at night and I'll see like 20 posts from security people. And I'm like, what were you doing during the day? Were you on social media? Or were you actually on your computer doing your job? Like, what were you doing? You were so busy saying, this person didn't listen to me and that person didn't listen to me. And don't they know blah, blah, blah. Not actually focused on work.
Yeah, Katie, I often wonder if this is an age of our industry question, right? Our industry, like I sometimes
part
think
of maturing.
Back. Yeah, I sometimes think back to when I was 21, 22 years old, right? In the late 90s, cybersecurity didn't freaking exist. There was like 3 companies on the planet. It was tiny. Nobody knew what the hell it was. And here we are now, this hundreds of billions of dollars of market cap or more that these massive companies are running after, that everybody needs. But this, if you think about it, that's 25 years. The industry has existed as an industry, as a product, solution, product market fit style situation for maybe 25 years. That's nothing. How long did it take to get building bridges right? How long did it take to get building buildings right? Right. Mm-hmm. So let's not be too hard on ourselves when we think about the impact of the business. I think, Adrian, myself for sure, Katie and Sean, you are much younger than we are, so I won't put you into our same gray beard situation over here. I think we're responsible for bringing together that storyline, right? We should be responsible for bringing together the storyline of, hey, we've been around this block. We've seen a lot of things here, and, hopefully we can do that as we move forward.
I was just inside some 2,000-year-old buildings that are still standing, so yeah, I can. I mean that provides some.
Well, there we go. What you're saying is, in 1,000 years, Checkpoint might still be around.
I
God forbid.
I do think it's a maturity thing, but I also think it's the ability to complain thing. Like, I'm sure people who were building the Colosseum were complaining to one another, right? But we spend so much time as an industry complaining about stuff because we have the availability to complain on more channels. That, they had the ability to complain when they were digging ditches in Rome, right? But they were also there probably being overlooked by people with bows and arrows and giant sticks that they would smack them with.
Katie,
like if somebody,
you better be careful. You better be careful. I'm gonna start lumping you in with us grumpy old people soon.
If somebody whacked you with a stick and said, "Do your job," you do your job.
Did you know that they once had a naval battle in the Colosseum? They flooded it. This is something I learned when I was over there.
Yeah,
my girlfriend was like, "Oh yeah, they used to have naval battles in there." I was like, "What?"
That sounds
floated
awesome.
Boats in the middle of the Colosseum. They flooded the whole thing, because the Romans invented aqueducts and sewer systems and stuff like that, so they knew how to handle water.
Today I learned. Adrian, how about you pull us back to topics that matter to cybersecurity?
Nero, it was Nero.
But yeah, I mean, that's the reason why I do a lot of the projects I do, where I point out like only 26 companies have ever been destroyed by a breach. Not to say that cybersecurity isn't important, but that there are a lot of myths and stuff out there about how important it is. It's not going to do $12 trillion of damages in 2025. Sorry. It's not going to come even close to that. But that doesn't mean it's not important. Clearly it's disrupting a lot of companies. 60 credit unions, hit by this group. I mean, we don't need to make up stuff to show the importance of cybersecurity here. The headlines, it's mainstream news. It's already there.
2023 was ransomware ugly.
It was. It still is
just ugly.
But that's the thing. If you're good at your job, you don't have to talk about how good you are at your job.
Right.
I think that's the case for a lot of things. Point. The people that are the people with money never talk about money. The people that are really good at what they do don't talk about how good they are. I think that's a lot of times that's almost a truism. The folks that are good at their job are the ones that aren't complaining and talking about how bad things are. They're the ones that are getting stuff done. To your point,
they get it done. That's
exactly. Right. Do your job. Be so good that they can't have that many complaints. Yeah, there you go.
I worked with a guy one time. Yeah, I worked with a guy one time who said he told me once that he had purposefully wired the telecom closet to the point where he was the only one who knew where all the wires went. And so I asked the obvious question to me, like, how do you go on vacation if you're so important? People have to call you to do everything. He's like, well, they can never fire me. And I'm like, yeah, but you can never go on vacation. Like, you can never go and do anything you want to in your life. How about just be so good that everyone relies on you for things, not this self-created situation where they're dependent upon you. Like that's just trauma.
Yeah. I've talked to a few people like that also, and they're just very proud of the fact that they had obfuscated the systems they had built to the point that nobody else could.
Yeah, just do a great job. Get that done to the point where anyone can do it, and then move on to improve the next thing.
Show me your documentation, and then I'll be impressed.
You'll be seen as the person that improves everything and makes it better. Then just go and make things better.
All right. How much time do we have here? Do any of you have hard stops? Because we still have a few more stories here.
I think we can go another 10, 15 minutes.
Let's go.
Tyler?
I'll go all night.
You've got to
not
think
gonna go
you're right,
all night.
Tyler.
I got a bottle of bourbon right here. I can go all night. Let's go.
We're not going to go all night, but we will continue. So this is right after cybersecurity isn't special. Is CISA, the U.S. government of all things, basically saying, "Look, you can't patch quick enough to avoid some of these attacks." So this is one of the ones I moved over from last week because I felt like it was important enough to discuss. And it's we have data on. Well, we just talked about Log4Shell is still getting exploited, and it took hours. And people put mitigations in place, and it took 30 minutes for them to leapfrog those mitigations that people put in their WAFs. So there's a conversation I have here about your vulnerability management program and your patching program.
This one kind of gets to me, and I want Sean and Katie's opinion on this because I think they're way more educated on this than I am. But if there's such a thing as 0 day, and even like pre-0 day, where it's exploited for a period of time before it becomes known, could we ever have patched fast enough? I mean, really, when it comes right down to it, by definition, we're at a failure throughout existence. Now, let's assume we can patch fast. Let's assume we can click a button and patch, and we don't run the risk of downtime. We don't run the risk of crashing our systems. We can just assume that the patch works. We're always going to be behind, aren't we, Sean?
I mean, by definition, we are always behind. I think part of the problem is that in a lot of situations, I'll use Microsoft as an example because that's my wheelhouse. A patch will come out for a Windows system or a Windows something that Microsoft put together a patch and releases it. Within a certain amount of time after that patch is released, even if it wasn't something that was in the wild, people are going to understand what was patched and then look at that vulnerable code, figure out a way to exploit it, and then use that to build an automated tool to scan and identify and, auto exploit whatever that issue was, depending on obviously what the severity is. So I think the issue is that the severity needs to better drive patching timelines. And I think a lot of companies have a process for that, maybe internally, but when it comes to these systems that are like remote access systems, like we're seeing with Citrix Bleed, I don't think it's fully understood that, hey, if you have this exposure to the internet, at a certain point, you might have to shut that down in order to resolve this, or like everything falls down. And I don't know. I think that a lot of companies or a lot of organizations really don't understand where systems are and how they're connected, and what the implications would be if one of those falls down. And I think Citrix Bleed was maybe a bit of an eye opener for that. I don't know. I think it should be fairly common sense that, yeah, if you have something that's open to the internet, that is a risk and needs to be prioritized. But some of these things have been not patched for months. I mean, if we look at the typical breach reports that come out in January and February for the previous year, most of the time they're going to say, all right, either it was through a password attack where we're going to guess the credential passwords, like credential stuffing. We're going to reuse a password that we found in a breach in this environment, or just guess a bunch of passwords that are common, or we're going to attempt to compromise something where a patch has been out for 6 months or more. So I kind of get it, but at the same time, I don't know. We've been talking about patching forever, and we still don't have a good answer for it.
Why can't we get it right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's the 0 day and the pre-0 day exploits. You can't really defend against that because you don't know about the stuff. Mm-hmm. But here we are talking about stuff from multi-years later that we're still getting popped for. Come on, how do we even figure out this problem at a broader scale?
So there's a 1 or 2% of the industry, and I've talked to a lot of CISOs about this, that just said, screw it. Like, we're just going to automatically patch the moment it's available and deal with the fallout.
Downtime is better than exploit.
It depends on your company, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're League of Legends, and players can't connect, and you might get a lot of subscription cancellations as a result.
After Super Bowl,
you're probably going to let exploits happen. You're probably going to keep stuff up, right? So it depends a lot on your business.
It very much depends on the business, the business goals. I used to work for somebody who worked for a massive telecom, and his number one charge as CISO was to ensure uptime and availability.
Yeah.
And he talked about that pretty frequently, and he
Most
talked
companies.
about it as a warning.
That's going to be the majority of companies, honestly.
Yeah, he talked about it as a warning to companies to say, know what your business needs, know what matters to the executive team, the board of directors, stakeholders. Obviously, if you're a public company, your customers and the public are your customers too. So know the business case. So it matters more to certain company, whatever matters more, whether you're a telecom and you need to have that availability. I heard Sean mention something about the Super Bowl. Like, you've got an outage in the middle of the Super Bowl. Oh my God, you've got so much stuff coming down on your head. But for other companies, it's different. So you need to know your business, and then you need to create a plan. But what Sean was saying, absolutely right. But isn't that a case for scenario testing, right? You have to know what your business needs. You have to be able to test it. You need to be able to simulate or emulate these things, and you have to contingency plan.
Well, it starts with asset inventory, which is part of it. And then the other problem that I think we have is, sure, if you have a Microsoft-centric environment, which a lot do, but a lot of companies and organizations now have expanded to have Mac and Linux and other endpoints and systems in the environment, that greatly complicates this patch quicker scenario. If you have Citrix out there, you've got Windows, you've got Mac, you've got Linux, you've got half a dozen or a dozen vendors with different systems that are in your environment, identifying what the version of that OS or that update is, as well as the applications on top of whatever the operating system is. And then you layer into that the other components that need to get updated, like firmware for actual physical systems, which pretty much never get updated. It gets very complicated very quickly. I can see why people like the SaaS approach where, we have to rent it, but someone else has to deal with the security issues.
Don't have to worry about patching anymore.
I mean, and with all the issues with Exchange, I mean, we talked about Rackspace last year, right? All the issues around Exchange, a lot of companies have gone, I'm not going to manage Exchange anymore on-prem. And realistically, for most, you shouldn't. You should just let Microsoft deal with that issue.
All right, we got to cut to pickleball because we're running out of time, and I do want to do at least one squirrel story, and I'm going to choose pickleball.
Pickleball all day.
So, who wants to? So first of all, I've got to say I love Jason Kobler. He did a lot of great writing back at Motherboard at. Vice. Motherboard was like the tech news side of Vice, and he started his own company, his own media company called 404 Media. And recommend checking out their stuff. They've got a lot of great coverage. A lot of it is cybersecurity and tech focused. But every now and then he goes down this Freedom of Information Act rabbit hole and finds these great stories. And this is one of those stories. And the title is FYI Pickleball Drama. Local governments
story,
overwhelmed.
Right, squirrel story? Squirrel story?
Yeah, this is a squirrel story. Yeah. Local governments overwhelmed by tennis pickleball turf wars, documents show. Ooh. So he dug up all these lawsuits and documents that are just all about pickleball. People are excited about pickleball, but at the same time, people also don't want pickleball courts in their communities for whatever reason. To the point to where pickleball equipment sheds are getting set on fire and burned down by arsonists.
I have no idea how this matches to cybersecurity, but
it's a squirrel story. It doesn't. That's the point.
But what I can say is I belong to a tennis club, and the tennis club was trying to put in pickleball courts, and they were sued by one of the tennis players because he lived on the tennis court. And he said that the incessant click, click, click noise of pickleball would be annoying to him. So they had a big lawsuit that came. So I've lived pickleball drama. I live right in the heart of pickleball Crips against the pickleball Bloods. I've lived right in the middle of it.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is, so is pickleball basically tennis for people with bad knees? Is that what it is?
It's essentially tennis for old people who can't move. People like me.
So you don't have to run around because it's a smaller court.
Right.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Oh,
what
but
I
it's
found most
also
interesting-
story. It's hilarious.
Little known thing about pickleball, though, it's the fastest growing sport in North America right now.
That is not little known. Everybody knows that now.
You
Stop
just
it! It's
Googled
little
that,
known.
Tyler.
My bourbon tells me that it's
You
little known.
Googled it.
You know what, Tyler? I'm going to say TIL. I just learned that thanks to you.
Today
So
I
thank you very
learned.
much.
That's right.
The interesting thing to me in the story was that, and I quote, USA Pickleball is the national governing body of the sport of pickleball. It has 2,200 ambassadors who have pledged to promote the sport of pickleball and the USA Pickleball in the local area that they represent. They are individuals or couples who work with the communities, clubs, and other various recreational facilities to guide and help build pickleball programs for all to enjoy. So apparently, this is not getting any smaller. If anything,
Sean,
it's
I
going
have
get
to
larger.
admit, on ESPN 8 The Ocho, I have
The
watched
Ocho?
a pickle. Adrian's laughing. Sorry, his laughter screwed me up.
The Ocho.
I have watched a pickleball tournament on ESPN 8 The Ocho. I have.
I have
ESPN the Ocho. Bold
I
move,
have-
Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Hold on, I have the remedy for security not being important enough. Let's recruit these 2,000 plus pickleball ambassadors, and they'll just go and evangelize the hell and annoy the hell out of everybody until they either listen to us about security or they kill us off as an industry.
One or the other.
Right?
One or the other.
Well,
I'm
one
all right.
more interesting thing from the article is that you can fit a whole bunch of pickleball courts in your standard tennis courts setup. So not just the clack of hitting this hard plastic ball, but more than just two people playing, you'll have like 8 people playing in the same area, and all you'll hear
A
is
lot more
clack, 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 clack.
More clacks per meter.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Little did you know
All
I'm
right.
a pickleball.
All
official.
right.
There you go.
With that, thank you so much, Katie, Sean, and Tyler, for joining me today. This was a very fun episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. And thanks to everybody watching or listening. We will be back next week.
Well, thank you, Adrian.
Thanks, Adrian.